PPA members have the opportunity to earn a professional degree called the Master of Photography. In order to earn this degree, they have to receive 25 blue ribbons in competition. The competitions are judged by people that have been through special training, and they learn the 12 elements of a merit photograph as part of their training. Now, you may not be judging PPA competitions, but learning these 12 elements will help you if you ever enter a competition or just to critique your own photographs or other people's. The first element is impact. Viewing an image for the first time always evokes some kind of feeling. Sometimes they can make us sad, happy, or angry. Sometimes they force us to look inward at ourselves. That's called impact. And the more powerful the image, the more powerful the emotional response of the viewer. So, impact. This is a really good example of a photograph that has a lot of impact. It was taken for the Farm Security Administration in California of a pea picker by Dorothea Lange in 1936. And it's a classic photograph because it has so much impact. You can see the expression on the mother's face, the worry, and the concern of her two children. It's no wonder this is a classic photograph, and it has a lot of impact. Another thing that professional photographies have to have is technical excellence, and that's the second element in the 12 elements. This is the print or image quality of the actual image itself as it's presented for viewing. There are a lot of aspects that speak to the qualities of the physical print, and they can include retouching, manipulation, sharpness, exposure, printing, mounting, color correction, and actually some others. This is an example of retouching. Very simple example. In the photo on the left, the puppy has spilled some crumbs from the cookie he was eating, and there are multiple catch lights in the puppy's eye, especially on the right eye. In nature, you only have one sun and one catch light outside. But studio photography often introduces a catch light from the main light, the fill light, and sometimes other lights. So many photographers never notice this and they don't retouch them out. But if you want to go the extra step, you do. And I always work on the eyes. You can see the difference between the photo on the left and the photo on the right, simply from retouching. Of course, there are other examples. If you photograph people, you can do a lot of retouching, and it's easy to overdo. So you have to strike the right balance. Second thing we're talking about in technical excellence is manipulation. This is something that can drive some of us crazy because there are people that do so much manipulation because of Photoshop. They just go crazy. But here's a very simple example. I took the photograph of a sports car and the logo, combined them into one photo. Simple. Nobody likes to look at an out-of-focus photograph, so sharpness is really important. However, you can use sharpness in your photograph to have the viewer's attention drawn to a specific thing. In this example, a flower, and everything else is out of focus. So this is using sharpness creatively. Basically, you want your photos sharp, though. Exposure is very basic. It used to be very challenging with film. You had to get the right exposure, and there was no leeway if it was wrong, overexposed or underexposed. But with digital, it's a lot more flexible. You have a lot more control. For one thing, you can look at the image immediately and correct it, or you can do it in post-processing. But either way, you want to get a good exposure in your photos. That's basic. Color correction's another thing that used to be difficult in film, but easy to correct in digital. You can do it in the camera or in post. Example to the left shows you what happens when you just take a photograph, daylight setting. It's very warm and doesn't accurately represent the photo gallery. So with a little correction, the photo on the right is much better. Third element is creativity. Your point of view is exactly that. It's yours, and it's unlike anyone else's. This element speaks directly to that perspective. It shows your imagination and how you use the medium to convey an idea, a message, or a thought to the viewer. This is how you differentiate yourself from others. Creativity is very subjective. You may make a photograph you think is very creative. Judges might not like it, but remember, it's a photo that you're taking for yourself and maybe for others. So, the example on the left is a typical Pimlico Point lighthouse up in Maine photograph. I tried to use a little creativity by using a little pool of water and reflecting the lighthouse in it. But my big difference in many photographs are the fact that I use panoramas quite often. And that this is sort of my style that we'll talk about next. And it also helps me to be a little more creative in presenting a subject. Style. I showed you a photograph of mine that's a panoramic. It's part of my style. There are many, many ways to apply this element to your work. Maybe you use light in a specific way on a subject, or maybe you make a technical decision for the express purpose of underscoring desired impact. When subject matter and style come together in an appropriate manner, the effects on an image can be spectacular. But remember, when subject matter and style don't work together, the results can be, well, less than spectacular. Part of my style is I like to work in the studio when I photograph pets. This is my dog, Ben. He's a cute little boy. And, like a lot of people, sometimes you just take a photograph of the dog. But by putting him in a studio, I have control of the lighting, retouching. I can clean it up. And that's my style. Also, as I already showed you, part of my style is to use panoramic photographs quite often. You can develop your own style. Will it judge well? Maybe not, but it's your style, and you can apply it to your photography. Composition is really important. When you join a camera club, you're going to hear a lot about composition, and they're going to teach you certain rules, and later on you may decide to stick with them or break them. But when all the visual elements of an image come together to express intent, that's when the magic of composition happens. Good composition captures a viewer's attention and directs it where you, the artist, want it to be. Depending on your intent, you can make something that pleases the viewer or disturbs them. So, in this composition of my friend Uwe, we were on a trolley car in Cologne, Germany, and I took a little portrait of him. And as you can see, he's off to the right. You're not necessarily in the middle of the photo. It's part of the composition I like because it shows he's in the trolley car. People in the background are slightly out of focus. So he's the sharpest thing in the image, and that's where I want people's attention to go. Presentation. Now, this is especially important when you're making prints. How you showcase an image is just as important as how you compose it. Everything in the presentation should work to enhance your image and not distract from it. Keep this in mind when choosing mats, borders, and everything in between. When I first started doing PP'A presentation photographs for competition, I just used a white mat because, that's what you see in art galleries. Well, that didn't really work that well. And I had one photograph in particular that didn't score. I thought it was a really good photo, and I showed it to an older lady, really experienced photographer and a national judge. And she took one look at it and said, "Oh, I can turn this into a merit print just by remounting it." And that's what we did. I changed the mount, the frame, the color of the mat, and resubmitted it, and I got a blue ribbon. So if you're going to hang a print, you really have to consider how it's framed and matted. For example, the photograph of the alligator, that frame and the mat kind of work with it better than the standard black frame and white mount in the other photos. So give some thought to that when you make prints. Seventh element is color balance. Proper color balance can bring in a sense of harmony to an image. When the tones all work together to support an image, the emotional appeal is that much greater. But color balance doesn't have to be used to bring harmony to an image. You can use color balance to evoke any number of feelings from a viewer. The choice in how to take advantage is entirely up to you. But no matter what, be sure your choice enhances farther than distracts. So here's an example of a tree color balanced correctly on the left and just really warm on the right. So which one is better? It's subjective, but it shows how you can control color balance and lighting. This is especially true like with setting sunsets and golden hour lighting. If you put your camera on color balance, color temperature on automatic, and you take a photograph, it'll look more like the one on the left. If you set it on daylight, you'll see the warmth in the lighting at that time of day. So pay attention to your color balance. You may want to look at the little screen to see if the color balance you're getting is right, or at least shooting raw, and you can always correct it later on. Element 8 is center of interest. This is where an image's creator wants a viewer's attention focused. Sometimes there can be a primary and secondary center of interest. Sometimes everything in an image will work together to create a center of interest. The flower I showed you earlier was an example of center of interest and having the viewer's attention focused on something. This photograph again shows the center of interest is the water and the bubbles. Background's out of focus, so you won't dwell on that. And the secondary part of it is the bottle itself of the strudel. That's what they call sparkling water in Germany. Lighting is very important. Photography itself means writing with light, photo, graphics. So you always have to be aware of the lighting in your photos. The use and control of light has an effect on every aspect of an image. It informs dimensions and shapes, it sets tone and mood, and like every other technique, proper lighting can be used to enhance your image, while improper lighting can distract from it. That's one of the reasons I use studio lighting on my pet photography. But in nature photography as well, the lighting is really important. The time of day, the quality of the light. In this example, we have some warmth from the light on the left and the coolness. I kind of like the lighting, the mood it creates, and in this photo. So you always be aware of the lighting, the direction of the light, where it's coming from, and how it falls on the subject. Of course, your subject matter is important. I sometimes take photos of goofy subjects, and I think we all do. But even though it lacks words, your image is still telling a story, and your subject matter is central to that. So make sure that your subject matter is right for the story that you are trying to tell. So in this example, photographing the dog, that's the important subject in this photo. The owner's in the background. She's slightly out of focus, again, making you look at the dog. The angle, I'm again lower, because the subject is the dog, so I put my camera lower, and the dog really becomes the center of interest in this. And anyone looking at it knows that that's the subject. Levinas technique. How you choose to execute your image is key. It is also a holistic decision. Technique informs everything in the creation of your image, from lighting and posing to printing and presentation. It all works to show off the techniques that you've mastered and you've applied to your craft. So part of my technique, as I mentioned, is often panorama photography. In this photograph, I'm concerned with the composition. I put the subject in. I had to wait to get this cable car in the right position. And of course, the red really jumps out against a very cool sky and snow and mountains in the background. It's part of the technique for this that I used in this photo. Storytelling is the 12th element. What does your image evoke in a viewer's imagination? What do you want your image to evoke in a viewer's imagination? Keep in mind, you are creating art. And while the act of creating is a personal thing, so too is the act of viewing. Your image is a story, and the one it tells your viewer may be one you never knew you were telling. So, here's a little story. Of course, it's kind of obvious. The pup is going crazy with the water, and the effect of the water with the light coming through it just creates a little story. And I put some of the elements together in terms of the composition and lighting. So you can tell your own story. Sometimes you'll look at a photograph and you'll see a story that's totally different than the person standing next to you. So here's some examples of photographs that I won blue ribbons with. This is kind of a cliche. It's an old barn in Wyoming I've seen in many photographs, and I call it part of my cliche series because I've gone around the country and taken these famous photos, but changed it by doing a panoramic. This is the Kissing Camels in Colorado. Again, one of my cliche series. The lighting on it is really important. It's that very warm light you only get for a short period of time after sunrise. I had to get up very early to take the photo, drive out to the rock, and then it was gone. The lighting changed. The decisive moment is often talked about in photography, and it's really important in sports photography. So this is a photo I took of way back in 1980 at the Winter Olympics of Eric Heiden winning a speed skating championship. In the final competition print, this is a scan of a 35 millimeter slide. I enhanced the yellow on his suit a little bit, and it won a ribbon. Again, part of my cliche series, very famous Portland Head Light. It's photographed by many, many people, and I was happy to get do it with a panorama, and I had some really nice lighting. I even waited for the light in the lighthouse to be facing me. This is a photograph I won a blue ribbon in a non-PP'A type show, but it's the two dogs, and it has that S curve you hear about sometimes in camera club competition. It's black and white. I worked on the eyes. It tells a story. It's a really nice photograph of our two dogs. Here's another photograph of a dog, Ben. He's the dog we have now. He's an old boy now, but he looked very happy in his photo. I did win another competition with this one. I did work on his eyes, and I used lighting in the studio. Of course, dogs have a lot of fur, so it's really cool to use a hair light. And finally, again, I like panoramas. I like studio lighting. Brought the elements together. I had photographed these two dogs in a session, and they were great, but they kind of got bored after a while, and they just laid down together like this, and I took a snap, and I entered it in a international panorama photography competition in France, and it was judged by school children in the town. And my son said, "Oh, you're going to win, Dad." And I said, "Oh, no, there were some really nice panorama photos." But the kids liked the dogs, and I won 4 bottles of really nice French wine. So those are the 12 elements of making a merit print, and I hope you'll be able to apply some of them when you do critiques of photographs.